I regret that my father did not live to see this day in person. He used to tell me all the time, he used to tell us all the time, en este país ustedes van a poder lograr todas las cosas que nosotros no pudimos. In this country. That means in this country you will achieve all the things we never could.
The Hispanic vote come 2016 will be one of the most important and powerful pieces of the presidential puzzle. And the issue of immigration reform, closing the borders, seeking ways to satisfy all sides in the debate could be a crucial part of any candidate's electability. More so for those with a Hispanic background, as Marco Rubio, who is no slam dunk to getting that vote despite his heritage. Our guest is the nationally syndicated columnist for the Washington Post Writers Group, author of A Darker Shade of Crimson, Odyssey of a Harvard Chicano, Ruben Navarrette. Ruben, good to see you again.
Great to be with you, Ed.
There are those who say that because Marco Rubio has flipped on immigration because he was once a member of the Gang of Eight, that he is completely unelectable at this point and not one Hispanic voter would touch him. To that you would say?
Nonsense. A lot of Hispanic voters and non-Hispanic voters will be glad to vote for Marco Rubio. It is a problem. His immigration stance would be better if it were clearer. It's muddy. It's muddled. There was some backtracking. He was in favor of immigration reform before he was against it. All that's true. But you heard in his speech, one of the things, perhaps the most valuable thing, Ed, that Marco Rubio brings to this race, he doesn't just want to lead America. He understands the whole point of America. And the whole point of America is that we're going to work at jobs and do things and have accomplishments and opportunities that our parents never dreamed of having. And that is not something you hear from the other candidates. It's not something you're going to hear from too many of them. Marco gets that.
How does he then, though, convince the Hispanic vote that I didn't make a mistake? Maybe this is the part. I didn't flip. What I did was he might come out and say, maybe I got smart. Maybe I became intelligent. Maybe I actually found a better way to do things. How does he convince them that he's not just somebody who's going to sell them a bill of goods and then walk away from it once he gets in office?
Well, it's a good point. He can't duck the issue. He can't pretend we're not going to connect the dots and figure out that it's a different Marco than he used to be. You're going to have to tell the story and say, listen, I got together with the Gang of Eight. I created a bill. Then it went through a process, the amendment process, and what emerged was a very different bill. It was different. I couldn't support it in its final version. And then with regard to executive action, he can say, you know what's true? I always said I wanted to do something for the dreamers, for undocumented young people brought here through no fault of their own by their parents. And yes, I then spoke out against President Obama for doing that very thing. But here's the difference, he could say. I wanted to do it the right way in Congress. The president does it by fiat in the executive branch. That's the difference. Marco has to explain these things, but he can't duck the issue.
Then how does he appeal not only to the Hispanic voters, as you have indicated to us that there's no problem, and at the same time appeal to those who say, shut the borders now?
Yeah, well, that's what he's trying to do, and that's really the confused state of many. I've counted at least 6 GOP contenders who have flip-flopped on the immigration issue precisely because they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. Speak to Hispanics and speak to that nativist wing of the party that wants to close the borders and call it a day. And I think that it's very difficult to serve these two masters. And at some point, Marco Rubio is going to have to choose a path and stick to it.
Which path do you think he would choose, or which path would he choose that would make not only Hispanics, but the rest of the nation happy to vote for him?
I think it's this. You know, he can say, my parents came here as legal immigrants. I support legal immigration. I'll fight tooth and nail against any Republican who thinks we ought to limit legal immigration. But I'm against illegal immigration. We've got to hold the line and enforce our laws. If he says that, it's the best he can possibly hope for. He's going to lose some votes, but he's going to win some votes too.
Do you think that Hispanics would vote for him just because he's Hispanic, or will they look closer at the issues? Because you know some people will say that, Ruben.
Well, of course, and I think that if an Irish person in Boston voted for O'Leary or O'Hare because of the O before his name, you know, nobody made a beef about that. That's the American way. There's this ethnic tribalism isn't something we discovered yesterday. People feel proud of the fact that Marco Rubio, and for that matter, Ted Cruz, could run for president and make a credible run at it. So they may well do that. Some of them may opt out of it. There may be those who vote against Marco Rubio because of his last name. What I see is a qualified candidate. I see someone who can finish in the top tier. I see a master communicator who understands the purpose of America. Don't count Marco Rubio out. He's in it to win it.
I don't think anybody's going to count him out, especially not after what he's getting after his first speech. I want to remind everybody that the book is called A Darker Shade of Crimson, Odyssey of a Harvard Chicano, a brilliant book. Ruben, always a pleasure to have you on the show, my friend. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, my friend. Take care.
Right, take care. What happens when you put a man with a rifle, a mother-in-law, and an armadillo in close proximity to one another? You have what's coming next. You probably already know. It's a pass to Outlands. Stay with us as MidPoint continues.